Please welcome to the stage retired Space Force Brigadier General Todd Moore, Senior Director, Space and Defense, General Dynamics, Information Technology. Tony Frazier, CEO, Leolabs. Charles Clarkson, Vice President and General Manager, Space Superiority and Imaging, L3 Harris. Dr. Barbara Golf, Strategic Advisor, Space Domain Awareness, United States Space Force. Retired Air Force and Space Force Colonel J. Fulmer, Program Manager, Strategic and Military Space Division, Space Dynamics Laboratory.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to SFA for putting on this great event. Give us an opportunity to talk for a couple minutes. I'd like to introduce the panel members here with me. To my left is Barbara Golf, currently serving as the HQ. Yeah, that's right. There you go. Serving as the HQE in a role for Space Force Strategic Advisor for Space Domain Awareness. She also directs the Pivot SDA activities, Joint Commercial Operations, and the Commercial Integration Cell embedded in CSPOC. Before this role, she directed experimentation for stand-up of JICSPOC and training activities at NSDC. Mr. Tony Frazier is the CEO of Leolabs, where he's focused on advancing the company's vision to be the leading mission partner for persistent orbital intelligence. He has more than 30 years of leadership experience at the intersection of commercial space, national security, and data analytics. His prior role to Leolabs was as Executive Vice President and General Manager of Earth Intelligence at Maxar Technologies, now Vantor. Mr. Charles Clarkson is Vice President. You can clap, it's allowed. There you go. Mr. Clarkson is Vice President and General Manager of the Space Superiority and Imaging Division at L3 Harris Technologies. His division delivers EO/IR payloads, ground systems, and end-to-end solutions for space superiority, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and space exploration. He is proud to support the U.S. Space Force through key space domain activities, awareness programs, including Mosaic and Atlas. Last but not least, Colonel Retired Jay Fulmer currently serves as a program manager with Space Dynamics Laboratory, supporting OTTI through their requirements development and validation efforts, as well as US Spacecom J79, integrating space effects at the Global Integrated Wargame. Prior to joining SDL, Jay completed a great 30-year military career, serving predominantly in space operations. Prior to his retirement in December 2024, Jay served as the inaugural Space Delta 10 commander, responsible for establishing the Space Force's premier doctrine and wargaming Delta. Yeah, there you go, Delta 10. There was a panel yesterday where there was a brief discussion about space situational awareness, which really comes to the foundational knowledge and characterization of space objects in the operational environment. Satellites, debris, and orbital objects, where they are and how they move in their orbits, potential collisions and things like that. And we are not going to talk about that today. Today we're talking about space domain awareness, which is a superset of space situational awareness. Space situational awareness, object tracking, plus broader understanding of any factor associated with space domain that could affect space operations. This particularly includes adversary behavior, intent, capabilities, operations, threat assessment, and more. In short, space domain awareness treats space as a warfighting domain, just like any other. It aims for a comprehensive awareness, not necessarily just what's up there, but who and what could affect space operations, how and why. So in 2 minutes, we'll work our way down the panel, each member having 2 minutes. The first question is what's going well for space domain awareness today? Barb.
Sure, so one piece going well. We do not have a sensing problem for objects that are 1 meter class or greater in LEO or GEO. So that's a major upgrade across the community. We also have a shift in focus or an expansion in focus for space domain awareness to things like electromagnetic spectrum operations. So PNT situational awareness, SATCOM situational awareness, we're taking these seriously now so you can see spectrum impacts and start looking at enabling spectrum maneuver. It's not an afterthought to the high accuracy catalog anymore. And this starts to open things up, things like electromagnetic spectrum ops, like TAC SRT, the overhead imagery analytics that we're doing, has really shifted the mindset about how the Space Force organizes, trains, and equips 11 combatant commands, not just one. We do that through our Space Force components, and we're starting to act like a service, providing 11 armies, space armies, to our combatant commands. So that's all going well.
Thanks, Barb. Tony?
I think one of the things we're seeing that's going well is a real commitment to commercial integration. When I joined Leolabs in March of 24, the Space Force had just rolled out its commercial space integration strategy, and it was great to see the policy and the strategies and the intent. But we're starting to see that realized in terms of how we're impacting real operations. And so having the opportunity to feed our data into the JCO, working on other initiatives like the TRACS program, having the ability to demonstrate that we not only have high coverage of the objects that have been tracked by the U.S. government historically, but also starting to see it really impact mission operations. So whether it's our ability to maintain custody of maneuverable objects like the Chinese space plane, or seeing some of the rendezvous and proximity operations of Chinese satellites, being able to characterize the change in characterization of Russian satellites. We're starting to see that get in the hands of warfighters. So super excited about that.
Thanks, Tony. Charles?
Yeah, I'll focus on something near and dear to us at L3 Harris. We were thrilled to have the Atlas system operationally accepted earlier this year, leading to that modernization of the legacy SPADOC system. Certainly, if you're not familiar with the system, it's ingesting hundreds of thousands of observations daily to make update to the space data catalog, tracking tens of thousands of objects. Why we're so excited about that is we're now in a modern microservice architecture, and so we can start to now build on that capability to put new capability into the hands of operators and the warfighters, bringing really the whole strength of the U.S. industrial base's software ecosystem into play.
Jay?
So as a retired military officer, because my focus oftentimes is on people and technology, and so from a personnel standpoint, we have the best people in the world doing this mission. Our Guardians are second to none. We're well trained, but even more importantly, they're dedicated to the task of ensuring that we maintain near 100% perfection in the space domain. Even though we have come a long way in terms of automation, the use of AI, and definitely different technological advances, you can't take the human out of the loop, right? And their intuition and knowledge of their craft is what allows us to continually ID and quickly characterize, potential new threats in this proliferated age.
Thanks, Jay. So, Tony and Charles, speaking to industry in the audience, what technologies are necessary to optimize the SDA that we already have for combat operations, and what technologies do we need to close the gap? And then after your 3-minute response, I'll have Jay and Barb counter or emphasize or underscore your comments, just for a little fun here. Mix it up in the afternoon.
So I think first off, talking about sort of the sensors themselves, we've talked about ground-based sensors, and what we need to do is we need to proliferate space domain awareness sensors on orbit, right? In achieving that proliferation, not just in LEO, but beyond to MEO and GEO. So what that's going to require is it's going to require us to be able to produce those sensors affordably, right, and get the whole cost of making a space vehicle down to be able to proliferate the sensing capability. Now, the other thing I think we have to think about is once we create all of this data, how do we get it down and get it into a system that's tactically relevant? I think we need to move to a position where we think about every sensor that's already on orbit as a space domain awareness sensor. So how do we put, one, the resilient comm networks in place that enable us to get all of that information to where it needs to be? And then now that we are swimming in this sea of information, how do we bring new tools, AI, to bear on that data set to really, we're still going to need to have operators like working on that data, but we need to get AI in the loop and automate that process to turn it into a manageable problem.
Nice.
I would just add that to me, it's about speed and capital efficiency. So one of the things that we've really been focused on at Leolabs, where we're raising private capital to put to work to bring innovation to mission, is identifying where there's gaps in the architecture and how can we cost effectively, quickly field new capabilities that are on mission. And so particularly in LEO, we've just seen a acceleration, in growth of adversarial, space objects. We're now tracking, over 1,500 Chinese, Russian, Iranian, North Korean objects, and they're starting to do aggressive maneuvering, which means that we need to be able to proliferate, a next generation set of sensors. And so whether it's in space, but there's a lot of things we can do on the ground. We've been focused on how to efficiently field new classes of sensors and put them into places where there's big geographic gaps. And so, in particular, because the Space Surveillance Network was built with a heavy focus on the Northern Hemisphere, we've been focused on how in Equatorial and Southern Hemisphere regions, we can fill gaps in coverage. And so with the rapid maturation of our next generation radars, we're committed to build a large seeker radar in the Indo-Pacific region that'll be able to detect new foreign launches, rapidly catalog new adversarial payloads. And then also we built an expeditionary radar called Scout, where we'll have the first system fielded in April in Maui. Really excited about that. And so then the goal is just, how do we work with the U.S., with our key allies, to get those capabilities out there and filling those coverage gaps.
Yeah, who wouldn't be excited about putting hardware in Maui? Good point. Jay, Barb, your thoughts?
So the only thing I would add is, while we may not have a sensor problem, we still have a sensor gap problem, right? Specifically in the southern hemisphere, and there has been talk about dismantling Diego Garcia and putting some of those optical sites in Australia. There's been other talks about putting sensors on top of U.S. embassies. Whatever the solution is, we need to fix it. We need to fix it quickly, because our adversary knows where we have sensor gaps, and it provides them an opportunity to do something that would cause us to lose track of a potential threat, and so that needs to be fixed.
I've got 8,000 commercial sensors coming out my ears, including from this guy. So I don't think we have a sensing problem anymore. We are drowning in data, like literally drowning in it. What I would say we have a problem with is, where do you put the applications that process that data? Like the SDA TAP Lab has an 80-app backlog. Where do we put it? I do not see that many unconflicted CI/CD pipelines and hosting platforms up at SIPR and up at JWICS. All this stuff is sitting at unclassified with the JCO, and I cannot seem to get the application to Mission Delta 2 or to Delta 15. So things like, there is no one platform to rule them all. Different types of platforms can handle different types of processing. Where do you put the back-end processor for the deep space radars? Like, that is an onslaught of data that you're dealing with. What do you do with compiling classified models? Because now you have information from Intel that tells you exactly what you're looking at. That code is now classified. Can you handle that executable? What about proprietary code? So Leolabs not only produces data, but they also produce advanced processing for radars. Where do I put his proprietary code base? And now I've got to host that where? Are you comfortable with giving your proprietary code to a competitor who is now, the way you put your information on SIPR or the way you put your app on SIPR? Probably not. You're going to go buy Leolabs if that's what you're going to do. So how are we taking these sorts of pieces, the different versions of how we host applications at secret and top secret, seriously? Otherwise, we're going to have all the processing answers at unclassified and nowhere to put them.
So it actually ties in nicely for the next question for Barb and Jay. How successful are we at bringing new commercial capabilities online across the enterprise, particularly at the commercial integration or JCO? Where are the barriers, I think is what you're really, hopefully you can speak to. Where are the barriers and the challenges in getting the data to the right user at the right time at the right security level? And then, not that you have to answer all 3 questions, but I wanted to tee them up this way. What should guardians be demanding? For the guardians in the office, you need to be patiently impatient. So, what should the guardians be demanding to enhance their mission? And we'll go with 3 minutes for each, and then a re-attack from the middle, 1 minute each. Thanks.
Yep. So I'm going to focus more on what should guardians be demanding. I mean, from my perspective, from a commercial integration, the Space Force is actually leading the way. With Jennifer Jeffries leading the commercial integration cell, the things that we're doing in our exercises and war games like Shriver War Games, I'm not saying we have it perfect, but compared to the Joint Force writ large and some of the things I've seen at Global Integrated War Games, we're ahead of the pack in terms of commercial integration. But the real question for me that I want to answer is, what should guardians be demanding, and should they be patient? And the answer is absolutely not. When I came into the military in 1994, we had an asymmetric advantage in space. We were the dominant power in space, as shown by Gulf War I, which is often classified or categorized as the first space war. But over a 30-year career, I watched that asymmetric advantage disappear to the point that now we consider China a near peer, and sometime in the future, if it hasn't already happened, in some areas of space, we may become the near peer to China, right? And that is a trend that we absolutely have to reverse. But it starts with the guardians demanding action from their leadership. Number one, we need to stop being risk adverse. And trust me, I know, I've heard it from senior leaders time and time again that we need to take risks. And I 100% agree. The problem is the risk adversity has been inculcated with us for the last 30 plus years, right? If you look at why we were so successful in the 1950s and 1960s, it's because people didn't mind blowing things up because they didn't consider it failure, they considered it learning options. The other thing that we need to be demanding is incremental capability. And what I mean by that is in 2019, SpaceX launched their first tranche of 60 Starlink. And I remember the 2 representatives coming to Air Force Space Command when I was the deputy director for 5.9, talking about their sort of business plan or business model for Starlink and how it could help stop some polar gap coverage problems that we were having. And one of the questions that I asked was, talk to me about your business development or your development of Starlink and when you plan on launching more of these. And the response I got to me, it was new thinking. In that we're like, hey, we will never get to increment 1. And so this first tranche of Starlink satellites that we launched is probably increment 0.5. And the next one will be 0.6, right? We will continue to put capability in space incrementally. And then as we learn from operating those satellites, as technology continues to mature, as new technology emerges, we'll add that to our increment baseline, and that will become the new increment 1.0. And to me, that was a powerful new way of thinking, and we should be doing the same thing. It is better that we get some capability in space than having the exquisite capability that takes 20 years to get there. And then we need to be demanding customers. Be demanding of yourselves. Understand your weapon system that you operate. Understand its needs. Take the time. Just don't be a bench warmer, but take the time to write need statements and get it through your squadron leadership and up to the headquarters. And be demanding of headquarters, right? To do the .mil PF analysis that needs to be done on your needs, right? And then if it turns out that we need to do a material solution, right, and those needs get turned into big requirements, then be demanding customers to the acquisition community to produce what you need in order to be able to effectively accomplish your mission.
Thanks, Jay. Barb?
All right, so that was a long litany of questions. Let's see if we can do this in 3 minutes. You ready? All right. How are we doing with new commercial capabilities? It depends on the data type and it depends on the infrastructure of the Delta. So let's give some good news stories. Start positive and we'll descend from there. PNT, situational awareness. Do we have anyone from TUNAV in here? Quiet, no. They have modern data schemas. So even though U.S. Space Force doesn't control the PEO that owns that COP, called the GNSS Operations Assessment Tool, they have a modern CI/CD pipeline. Now don't get me wrong, it's tedious herding the cats on getting the upgrades for that COP, but you can make it work. We've gone fairly fast with that one, and that piece moved into operations in less than 14 months from nothing. So getting stable funding is the issue, but actually running the CI/CD pipeline actually isn't that big of a problem. So we can work that one. That's gone well. Astrometric observation data, if you're putting it into a modern tool like OSIRIS or KBR's SIDSES, both those teams, MIT Lincoln Lab, KBR, can take that data. They're putting it into NSDC. They're putting it into the US Spacecom J3 JOC. It's very simple. They can use all of the commercial data sets. So they're off and running. Again, modern infrastructure. At the moment you start going into the legacy infrastructure, like legacy CDSs, where you're trying to get something into Delta 9 through some of the older infrastructure, quite frankly, they'd rather pay another $70 million for an ORS-5 than take the 400 million sensors we've already stuffed into the UDL because it's easier to get the data off the back end. Like, that's terrible. That's a terrible answer. Because we've solved that problem for $10 million a pop, and they want another single sensor because apparently it's easier. That's crazy. And so it really depends on the back-end infrastructure that a Delta is saddled with, on whether or not they can use some of these new pieces. So what are some of the barriers? You just heard me talk about the logistics of what each Delta is having to deal with. The one I was just describing is sensor calibration. The sensor calibration processes for some of the Deltas are manual. Like, what they can handle is like 40 to 80 new optical or passive RF sensors. That's it. I have 8,000 in the queue. 8,000. Like, we are well beyond manual processing. So how are we going to handle these sorts of large quantities of data coming from thousands of sensors? We've got to find a way to get that to close. And I'll congratulate Mission Delta II. So their new commander is looking at a different paradigm. This is not about high accuracy catalog. It's about tactical accuracy catalog. It's about UCT dump buckets. It's about XGO processing. And there is no single catalog to rule them all. You can use different algorithms on different systems and to be able to point to things in different ways and solve them in bespoke ways in order to solve them faster. And so I think we have some opportunities to turn a corner here as we're moving forward.
Thanks, Barb. Tony, Charles, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important is it's not just about making the data available, it's also, how do we make the capability available? So building on, a comment Barb made earlier, we need the right type of secure DevOps pipelines, to be able to not just move data, but applications, quickly from the low to the high side. One of the things that, just from my prior life, working in the GEOINT mission that was really instrumental was work we did with the 18th Airborne Corps when they were really applying Project Maven to targeting applications. And so we were doing quarterly sprints with their Scarlet Dragon exercise series where we were able to rapidly both make the data available, but also through the AI inferencing platform, be able to move algorithms, to quickly do, target detection, capabilities that would be able to allow us to, take an image, apply computer vision algorithms, to do target identification, get accurate coordinates, and then support fires. And the goal was to take that from, what was a multi-hour process down to 30 minutes. And so being able to iteratively develop capabilities, get that operating on the right networks, we were able to accomplish that over 3 sprints. And so I think there's a lot of those parallels that are applicable to this mission area. And again, it's all about how do we create those pathways to the warfighter.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think there's, as you said, there's pockets where this is going well, and there's areas where it's challenging. Working with Mission Delta II, we brought on board a CODA, the Consolidated Operational Data Archive, to start ingesting commercial data and making that available to the operators to use on the ops floor. But I also want to hit on the other side of your question, which was about what should the Guardians demand. And I think one of the challenges in the space domain is that it is inherently abstract, right? Like, we all have this notion of what it's like to drive in a vehicle, what it's like to fly in an airplane. Most of us, right, have not been to space. And so it's like, look, how do we provide Guardians, right, tools that have the ease of a user interface that we become accustomed to through our daily lives, through our iPhones and the like. So I think that's really making sure that we're putting tools into the hands of the Guardians that are intuitive and usable, right, so that we can take what is an extremely complex problem and make it simple.
So we're doing right on time. This is great, guys. So Jay, I'm going to start. We're gonna rip through this way here. Jay, I'll start with you. Speaking to the leadership at the conference, whether they're in the room or they'll see it on recording, right? Speaking to the leadership here at the conference, what are the technical or policy bottlenecks or barriers that need to be removed to achieve real-time or near real-time sharing of critical SDA data for combat operations?
Yeah, thanks, sir, for that question. And those of you, just full transparency, that know me know I hate policy. In my mind, as a military commander, policy was something that got in my way from being effective at my job. And so I just wanted you guys to know that up front as I come forth with sort of my thoughts on this. Back in 2022, I got a chance to witness sort of two back-to-back battle school events. The first one, a senior leader came in from the Pentagon, participated and ended up losing the fight to China. And when we went back and did the forensics, we realized that he had followed every policy that had been in place. 3 weeks later, another senior leader came in, did the same type scenario, one against China. And when we took a look at it, he had thrown every policy out the window and then said, we're in a conflict. I don't care about policy. I'm here to win. And that's sort of my mindset as well. When we're in a conflict and we have seconds, sometimes minutes, to make decisions, we've got to ensure and have the authorities in place in advance to be able to share the data with whom we need to share it with. As General Raymond used to say, it's going to be the lieutenant or the captain, the specialist or the sergeant who are going to be the first to have to make decisions, and they need to feel empowered to be able to share what information they need to share to make the right decision until the appropriate leadership can get in place. And so, we have an opportunity right now to break some of that glass and to get those authorities in place that the other services, have, but because we think space is so special, that we need the Sec War, the President, to provide some of those authorities. I would argue that we don't. We're another warfighting domain, just like air, just like sea, just like land, and we need to have the same authorities to prosecute any conflict in space that those domains have as well.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit different angle here, and really it's about how do we speed up the acquisition process so that we can get the right communication, the right technologies, the right tools, leveraging industry to get those in place effectively. We're really encouraged by obviously everything we're hearing out of the Department of War about urgency, about eliminating bureaucracy, about being able to move fast on acquisition. I think prior to that, we've been pretty vocal about getting rid of, I'll say, some of the more onerous acquisition processes, right? We do a TINA process, which requires us to put a whole bunch of extra rigor into cost planning in our proposals versus putting money into the actual solutions. Like the limit for us to use the TINA process is $2 million. Can we please move that to something that's a little bit more reasonable? Similarly, as we look at the protest process, all of this is there's a lot in the acquisition space that really could be revamped so that we get more dollars focused on solutioning, and then the technology and the communication channels and the tools are there to more efficiently enable data sharing.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been really positive with the acquisition reform guidance has been how do we help expedite efforts to enable allies and partners. And so one of the things that we've been able to do at Leolabs is we've built a global business where the U.S. government is a key customer, but over half our revenue comes from international partners. Many of those customers are part of efforts with Space Force and Space Command, so Operation Olympic Defender, the Combined Space Operations Initiative, creating ways to expedite export of some of the capabilities that we're innovating and delivering to enable Allied by Design to be real, I think would be super powerful. So that's an area that we're focused on.
I got a couple on this one. So one area, systemic legacy overclassification. So things like legacy restricted lists, what are we doing? Like if you're beeping and squeaking, if multiple commercial sources can see you, you're done. Like I don't know what we're playing at. The world can see you got to get over it. Other pieces, treating space domain awareness data different than any other warfighting domain. There's no such thing as a maritime domain awareness sharing agreement. There's no air battle manager has ever signed an air domain awareness sharing agreement. And yet we spend so much time on SSA sharing agreements. Normal combatant commands don't do that. It's threat sharing. They check a general security of military information agreement. Can I trust this country with this level of information? And then you check the damn SCG and you move on. So we're spending a lot of time treating space like it's something different from any other combat domain, and it's not.
So can I go ad hoc a little bit? So what, I think we probably talked about this a while ago. What keeps that from progressing? Why are we still, just from your perspective, why is it staying that way that we continue, if we can see it, if the adversaries can see it, if they can listen to it, if they can track it, why are we holding it? Is it just legacy thinking? Is it that there's policy somewhere in I was going to say OSD, I guess OSW now? Yeah. I mean, where is it hung up that it needs to be addressed? Is it that we need a National Space Council to step in and take action? Just your thoughts on that part. Sorry.
It's the latter. It's bigger than us. And so if it was up to us, I think this would have been gone by now. So we do need help at the highest levels to get that fixed.
All right, so perfect timing. Last question. And the last question is, we've had a question specifically to tailor the answer towards industry, a question to tailor towards the leadership, and now the question is really designed to have an answer tailored for the guardians in the audience. And so the question is this, and Barb, we'll start with you and head that way. If we had to go to war in 120 days, if we only had 120 days left, what actions would you recommend the Department of War take to secure combat-relevant SDA for effective offensive and defensive operations? 2 minutes each, and we're perfect timing.
Daily live practice on the basic elements of scenarios for finding, fixing, and tracking on targets. So things like detecting closely spaced objects, doing RPO practice. There's plenty of things to practice on. There are plenty of commercial objects on orbit or other objects that we can practice on. We should be doing this every day. Things like object search and reacquire post-maneuver, timed, where we are delivering target quality states to our ops centers, to our HVAs in every orbit regime every day. It's just a battle drill. You do it all the time. We do this for ascending objects, you do it for descending, whatever. And that builds the muscle memory for constant repetition to be able to do the basics in a fight. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice till they can't get it wrong.
Yeah, +1 on all that. I think, what I would say, what we're really excited about is as we get our capabilities more deeply integrated into the architecture, there's ways that we can show that commercial can contribute, to those missions. So, when we're able to get up to 13-time revisit a day for Chinese ISR, satellites, having that applied in a counter C5 RSRT mission would be pretty freaking cool. And so we can, one of the reasons why we're really committed to get our capabilities integrated into the operator environment is to be able to help support a number of those missions through exercises, through operational tests and evaluation, and ultimately could be applied in a tactical sense.
So if I could just reattack ad hoc here as well, do you have your team in the right places to be shoulder to shoulder with the government so that there's no lag in the relationship, no lag in comms in this 120-day sprint before war, so that you can blow past all of the
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Yeah, I think steps like the commercial integration cell, having our team cleared, through that's a huge step forward. We're starting to do that with the acquisition folks, but there's a lot of opportunity to be more deeply integrated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly reiterate some of what's been said already. The reality is that we're going to go to war with what we have, and under that scenario, we're going to be reliant on our guardians to fill those gaps that inherently exist in our systems, or those areas where maintenance has been deferred and we have a large technical debt that we need to pay back. So it's going to be training. It's going to be augmenting staffing. It's going to be using people to close communication and data links that are not in place today and that are not automated today. But I certainly know that we have guardians who are ready for that challenge.
Jay?
Yeah, so I'm glad you said it. When we're 120 days out, we're going to go into a conflict with the force that we have, right? And so any undelivered capability, right, it's just going to have to put on the back burner until the conflict, at least the initial stages of it, are over. From my perspective, with that force that we have to fight with, we got to protect it. We got to protect it as much as we can from either kinetic fire, from direct energy, from cyber attacks. And then if we have anything in the barn, one of the things that we need to anticipate losing at the outset of any conflict is our launch capability. And so we need to get assets in orbit that are currently set in storage. And then from a space domain awareness perspective, we need to make sure that we are 100% confident we have characterized the battle space, that we have done everything we can to ID and characterize potential threats, and that we maintain custody of those threats. Right, the last thing, when I was at the 1st Space Control Squadron, my biggest worry was that, the adversary knew our maneuver criteria. Today, especially in the age, as I said earlier, of proliferated constellations, that's something that we characterize as a rocket body all of a sudden comes to life and does damage to one of our high-value assets. And that's where the intelligence piece is so important, that we have accurately characterize things that are in orbit, and we know and maintain custody of those threats.
I love asking that question, and even when I was in uniform, that was always a question I liked asking, mostly because it stands often in stark contrast to what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, there are some things, obviously, we are doing on a day-to-day basis that contribute towards to being ready for a crisis. But there's two problems. There's two additional problems with that question. Is you never know when that 120-day clock starts, and it's usually, if you look at history, right, it's somewhere inside of 30 days. Do you really get a sense of that it's going to be unavoidable? So I offer that to the Guardians in the audience and online. Simply because thinking about what it's going to take to handle a crisis in the moment starts with actually operating just like that, routinely, not episodically, not occasionally, but intensely. And the second thing is while those rehearsals and those practices are important, those exercises are important, it's also recognizing that attrition's going to be a real thing. You can plan all the things you want to do to prepare for combat operations, but ultimately the adversary gets a vote. Sometimes your network gets a vote. Sometimes your hardware gets a vote. There will be things that go wrong. And so, again, the more that you scrimmage, the more that you're ready for the game day. And I know I'm bad with metaphors, and I've been accused of that in the past, but It has truly been an honor to be here. Let's extend appreciation here for the panel.
Hey, and Todd, I want to say one last thing.
Yeah,
if you
go.
don't- you
Of
don't
course
mind.
you
So
do.
something the Secretary of the Air Force said yesterday that it holds true for all of us, right? Undelivered capability invites national disaster, right? And that is why industry and the government have got to be working hand in hand to quickly get new capability online so we maintain that technical edge, that we don't become a near peer to China or some other adversary, but they're always trailing us.
Yeah, and I would go on to say some of the healthiest organizations build the tightest relationships with industry. Yeah, we might not be wearing OCPs, but in reality, we want to win just as much as anybody else does, and we're your teammates through and through. So with that, SFA, thank you very much for hosting this great event. Look forward to doing it again next year, and have a great new year, everybody. Thank you.